Who was your co-worker from hell? By Ask Reddit.
I had a 50-year-old colleague who would message women on sugar baby apps and rub one out over his trousers. Saw him blow his load in the open office. He sat next to me. Kept on happening, reported it. He said he had a genital rash, but admitted to messaging people on social media. I got in trouble for my accusations. Fast forward 8 months, he's sitting opposite me now. He starts rubbing one out in the open office again. I recorded him, showed my manager, and he was finally fired. He was AC too.
Till people openly masturbate, I feel so dirty.
I remember coming to work one day, retail manager, and seeing a dude masturbating in his car in the parking lot. At 1 o'clock in the afternoon. Some people just have no shame.
I have encountered 2 women masturbating in weird places. The first was an older woman parked at a petrol station. I genuinely thought she was having a medical incident, so felt concerned enough to approach her car, only to see she was 2 knuckles deep. The second was approx mid-20s, in a weird purple wig and knocking one out in a changing cubicle beside me at a swimming pool. A friend of mine saw a guy wanking in a park. Apparently he was laughably big DK Ed too.
Never understood the office masturbators. Like really? You can't wait until you get home or at least go use a bathroom.
That and the people that view P at work and print out pictures from the websites. The one printing out pictures got fired for masturbating in our office during a thunderstorm.
I'm not sure why, but the thunderstorm makes that story 10 times better.
He told the general manager that he might be a bit late for a shift due to his second job. When the GM reluctantly said okay, he apparently took this as thinking he had free rein to come and go as he pleased. He'd show up anywhere from 7:30 to 8:30 for his 7 o'clock shift. Then when the doors closed, he'd insist he had to head out, and he had an early morning the following morning, leaving everyone else to do the closing work. He also had other issues like being rude to customers and other employees. People mostly kept quiet until one day a higher-level manager had to sub on night shift. When he went to leave early and the rest of us with the work, the manager flipped, "If you lay a effing finger on that money before this work is completely done, don't bother coming back." The guy insisted he had permission, and left anyway. When our GM returned and he tried to come back, our manager said, "You warned me you were going to be late one time, and I never once gave you permission to otherwise start late or leave early. Clean out your locker now."
I knew a guy like that. Came in late his second day on the job. Left before the work was done most days. Finally got fired for it.
Got a new guy who would log out of his station 30 minutes early to sit by the time clock. Manager came down and asked where the heck he was when his shift still had 20 minutes. Told them, and the guy got a good verbal beating from the manager. Came back to tell us we were snitches. He lasted about another week.
We had a sysadmin who would come to work and run his real estate business from his desk while he was supposed to be working. The whole time coughing and sneezing and sniffling constantly. We called him Itchy. He would also call friends and family and have hours-long conversations with them while we all had to listen. He picked up the nickname Thanksgiving Dinner Guy for using the break room, full kitchen, to cook entire meals that wouldn't be out of place at a family gathering. One of the offices in another wing had a sheet by the door for people to log when they saw him and what he was cooking that day. He didn't like any of us, the feeling was mutual, and left books like jerks at work. On his desk, when he finally got fired, they found out he never did any of his sysadmin work. No backups, no password changes, no log monitoring.
When he finally got fired, they found out he never did any of his sysadmin work. Honestly, sounds like your company is incompetent too.
Turns out if management don't understand IT, it's possible to just make poo up and fake doing your job, but it's almost as much work as just doing your job right in the first place.
As a sysadmin can confirm.
Honestly, sounds like your company is incompetent too. Never worked in a big company before? Incompetent people remain working all the time. Case in point, I should be working but instead I'm posting this to Reddit.
The true mark of a competent person is getting his work done while also slacking on Reddit.
Supervisors will say, "If you have time to be on Reddit you could be finding more work to do, bitch. All my responsibilities as listed on my job description are taken care of in full. If you want me to work more then pay me more."
How long was he in the company before getting fired?
Good question. Follow-up question. What company was it? Are they hiring?
Reminds of that giant 4chan post about the guy who worked IT and had no idea how to do anything, so he just downloaded Adobe Reader or turned things off and on again and somehow never got found out.
I worked shifts. Can't go home unless I passes my reports to the next person. One particular bitch loves coming in late. Not 5 or 10 minutes late, I'm talking 25 to 30 minutes late. Best part, she loves bitching about how everyone is always on her ass for coming in late. She literally lives 5 minutes walk away from work, so no one knows why she's always late.
Go get her ass.
Surprise, bitch, your shift starts now. So put down the ego and get your ass out here.
I work fast food and we had a guy like this. Lived 5 minutes away and would consistently be 30 minutes to an hour late. Was late so much that we started to schedule him an hour later, still came in late. We started betting on what time he would show up because he was late so much.
Being an hour late every time and not getting fired, how is that possible?
The owners of the store are super hands-off and are against firing anyone. Plus he knew how to do his job and we need to keep as many of those people as possible.
She was just following the late law. The closer to work, school, whatever you live, the later you'll be. This explains a great deal about working from home.
Do you at least get overtime for that extra half hour, or do they screw you on that and say, shift ends at N? Oh.
Overtime? In the ICU? LMAO no. I'm so glad I'm not working in that hellhole anymore.
Oof, my dad worked for years and still works ICU. In the middle of COVID their jobs are on the line. Apparently doctors willing to work 24-hour shifts are expendable. And that's a nicer story. Glad you got out of that crap tornado.
She almost got me fired because she wanted to find the weakest looking guy to be her little errand boy. When I told her politely to go screw herself, she told HR that I had been taking work out of her queue in the system. It wasn't a very good lie though, because why would I want to do more work than I have to? I even said this to HR in the disciplinary meeting.
Did anything happen to her for lying?
Nope. They just called it a dispute and everyone carried on. I got fired later for not being great at the job in the end. She left to go and do something else. 2 or 3 years later, she saw me in a local bar and said, "Oh my goodness, hi. I haven't seen you for ages." As if nothing happened. I totally ignored her. You can't try to get someone fired and then act like nothing happened.
2 or 3 years later, she saw me in a local bar and said, "Oh my goodness, hi. I haven't seen you for ages." As if nothing happened. I have had people do this with me, as well. One person stopped me in a grocery store to say, "It's been so long," and ask me how I've been doing, how my family is. I just looked at them and shook my head and carried on. Talk about two-faced.
It's been so long. Yeah, for a reason. Bye.
I wish it had been longer.
I used to date this guy when I was 19 who caught me at a very vulnerable state, and he used to beat me for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. He'd do other stuff too, but the beatings were enough. I saw him at an Aldi and we locked eyes, but I couldn't place him until after I was done shopping. Once I figured out who he was, sped up with packing my groceries because I didn't want to have any interaction with him at all. I didn't move fast enough and he came over and asked if my name is Jerry73 and I said no. He then said, "Well, you must have a twin because you sure look like her," and I said, "Yeah, I'm not her." I was in awe by the fact that he had the nerve to walk up to me and say hi like nothing ever happened between us. I knew if he remembered my name, he remembered busting my nose, dotting my eye, busting my lip, you name it. Why would you want to talk to me? How do you know I'm not alone? What do we have to reminiscence about, because I don't remember having a great time with this guy. It's then I realized he was insane. No other way to put it.
Sounds like a definite psychopath. Glad you got out of it.
Yeah, he was, but I will say he taught me a lot about paying attention to red flags. I still had more to learn as I wasn't even 21 yet, but he was definitely a lesson learned. Also, some trolled me about what said above lol. My first troll ever, and I've been on this site for years. Awesome.
I knew this girl from like first grade all the way through high school. We were good friends until like 7th grade. In middle school I was sick a lot. I missed math class, which I shared with this girl. I texted her to ask what our homework was. She texted me back poo that didn't make sense, so I called her. She proceeded to make fun of my horribly on the phone and got her dad to join in on it. I never talked to her again. She still pretends we're buds when I see her in public. She tried to hug me once at a comic convention and my sister loudly asked, "Isn't that the girl who got her dad to make fun of you over the phone while you sobbed in the backyard?" Hopefully she got the hint. I don't care if it was middle school and I'm now 25. F you, Jesse.
So that girl's F it up, but what the hell is the dad's problem? Who would do that?
Absolutely no clue. He's an alcoholic, so he was probably drunk as F.
Some dude F'd my then wife in the restaurant bathroom where he and I worked. This was probably 25 years ago. Last year he saw me pull into a gas station and followed me into the parking lot and tried to act like we were long-lost old friends.
Had a coworker who always gossiped about others and would say horrible things about everyone in the office. It created a super toxic culture and caused many people to leave, not because they didn't like the work, they just hated the culture.
Had a coworker who would talk to you in a low, earnest, confidential tone about everyone else. Instigator is, I think so and so's a bitch. Don't you? Innocent person, IP. No, I like her. Is, what about the time she did such and such thing? Don't you think that was bitchy? I think that was bitchy. IP. Well, I guess I could see how people might think that was bitchy, but is the next day, blasting to anyone who would listen. OMG. IP told me she thinks so and so is a bitch. And she kept talking about the time she did such and what a bitch she was for doing that. Fortunately she got cold-shouldered out. Basically everyone removed her from social media and refused to talk to her in person about anything that wasn't strictly task-related. She left shortly after.
I work at a hotel with a restaurant and every one of the restaurant workers was like this. The result was the most dysfunctional group of people I've ever seen. Certain people couldn't work alone together, otherwise it would end with a screaming match in front of the guests. Management frequently got into conflicts with them for just trying to get them to do their jobs. One positive impact COVID has had was that we don't have our restaurant open during the pandemic. I haven't missed that at all.
Restaurant work and work families can be so good and so rewarding. I wouldn't have many of my favorite people in my life if it weren't for restaurant work, but damn can that same environment be the perfect breeding ground for that toxicity you're talking about.
He was in his 50s, had often uncontrolled diabetes, was 6 feet 4 inches tall. I was 24, and a foot shorter. Normally he was a teddy bear, but when his blood sugar got low he would get violent. He tried throwing punches at me for suggesting he get a Coke from the vending machine in the hall. Good thing he's slow and clumsy in that state. When we were in the truck together once, and it started making a weird sound, I wanted to take it into the shop and he insisted we didn't need to by yelling at me and pounding his fists on the dash, but we were going to a remote area and I didn't want to have to try and find help if the truck broke down and the radio didn't work. I had to call search and rescue on him once because he didn't come back to the truck after doing a transect biology job. You guessed it, he had low blood sugar and was not able to find his way back to the truck. He had no education or experience in biology, but he just couldn't be fired from his job driving a plow. With his propensity to let himself get hypoglycemic, he couldn't drive either. So they shuffled him to the wildlife department because he had an interest in wildlife. I was basically his babysitter.
Would he be remorseful once his blood sugar got back up?
He never even acknowledged it.
Can confirm he's just an asshole then. You almost always remember the experience afterwards unless it gets really bad, like loss of consciousness, seizure bad. As a type 1 diabetic who has had many a severe low blood sugar episode, you can become very angry, confused in that delirious state, but I've never even thought to hurt somebody who is trying to help me. I've sometimes said, done something embarrassing but nothing on this caliber.
Yes, I know a few people with diabetes. They'd never, ever threaten violence when they had low blood sugar, though I guess I never saw them have low blood sugar. They took it seriously. I think part of this guy's problem was he had some bouts of denial. It ended up costing him his life. He passed out behind the wheel while driving down the highway and crashed his car. Luckily he didn't take anybody out with him.
This was a person that was in the aircraft qualification training squadron at the same time as me. He wasn't an intentionally terrible person, but his lack of self-awareness made any interaction around him difficult and exhausting. He washed out of another flying career field. In the first sims, before the flying phase, he refused to use established procedures, resulting in degraded ability to provide required data to external players. Managed to fail his first instructional ride, despite it being nearly impossible to fail if you show up. He could not figure out how to take leave, despite several people walking him through the process. Rather than trying to solve any problem, he would announce it to the rest of the room, and if no one jumped in to help him, asked the nearest person. He managed to frustrate and time Jack, the kindest instructor I know, because he didn't have a basic understanding of a training airspace. In a bid to get back to more pressing, and more likely to be completed, tasks, he gave me an apologetic look as he suggested that LT Pub Spotter was a smart student, and could probably help him get up to speed. I could not.
Canadian Air Force here. The number of horrendously inept people I've dealt with over the past 10+ years is amazing. One kid I worked with met a girl, got married and divorced within a year of joining. Refused to wash himself regularly. He walked around with greasy glasses. His everyday glasses were smeared with weeks' worth of finger grease, and dandruff and skin flakes form his dry, dirty skin. It wouldn't have been so bad if he knew how to do his job, which a trained monkey could do, but this kid couldn't. He also got his mother to move in with him in military housing to help him with housework and bills. There are a lot of great people I've worked with, but the bad ones really make you question why you try so hard when you could be poo and still get by.
When I was looking at an aviation MOS, a family member did me a huge favor and set me up to chat with 4 aviation guys. 2 Navy, 1 Air Force, 1 Luftwaffe. They gave me a bunch of advice and regaled me on their stories as pilots do in a group. The Luftwaffe guy had a washout in his squadron after the trainee found out he was being assigned to a Tornado instead of an old MiG like his dad, an East German, had flown and the trainee wanted. I still remember the family friend laughing in his accent because the recruit assumed the statue in front of the base meant the Germans had that plane there and was so combative they transferred him out of the program.
The 50-something turd that was the owner's son. Spoiled brat. Reminded me constantly who he was if I stood up to him. Creepy as hell too. Could never just tell any of the women they looked nice. Actually told me one day that my legs looked nice. I was wearing a skirt. That was the last time I wore a skirt to work for a long time. I immediately started looking for a new job within a month. There were so many other things that occurred. I was turned off from working for a small family-owned business since.
The small business tyrant, a common archetype.
Working for a small business is either great, cause you're workin' for good people, or awful cause of people like this. Rarely any in between, and nowhere to hide like a giant company.
I'm picturing a 50-year-old Jean Ralphio.
This woman who was one of those people who always had to one-up you. Like if you cut your thumb off, she was just recently sawed in half. She was constantly complaining and miserable, and it was so draining.
I had a co-worker like this. Drove us all crazy. Around 2002 in an IT department. Here's some of his claims. Friends with George Lucas dated Christy Alley. Steven Spielberg was going to produce one of his screenplays, but someone was jealous and claimed he plagiarized her work, and Spielberg believed him, but she had connections, so he couldn't do anything about it. Had a degree in law and was a lawyer before he became a software developer and won every case. Dude was maybe 25 at the time. He sucked as a developer, and I flat out told him once he should re-enter the legal field, which he somehow took as a compliment. Played golf with Bill Gates on more than one occasion. There's a lot more, but these are the biggest lies.
The guy was 25 in 2002 and claimed he dated Kirstie Alley? Odd choice of fake Hollywood star girlfriend. She would have been in her 50s at the time.
That stuck out to me too. She was hot when she was on Cheers in the late 80s.
A guy in the Air Force. I didn't work with him, but he was such a liar. He gained a reputation across the base of all the things he had done, owned, etc. Someone in his department typed up a 2-page, single-space letter of all his brags.
I knew someone in 8th grade who was like this. I mean, at least she had the excuse of youth and immaturity, but oh my god, the poo she'd say. She said that she used to go to this private Catholic middle school that one of my friends went to, and she played on their boys' hockey team, unsure if a middle school even had one. And they let her wear figure skates to play in the games, and she was really good at doing, like, a triple toe loop or something to get the puck past defenders. Her permanent record, like her school record, was burned down when her family's house garage burned down because for some reason she was in possession of her own permanent record. She claimed it was because they moved, had moved, were moving, and so former school gave it to her to give to her new school.
Sounds like this person escaped from a 90s family film.
Seriously, I can almost hear the trailer. Cue 90s butt rock intro. Jenny McAllister was just your average girl, basic bitch number 2. Hey, Jenny. Jenny. Hey. But little did she know Jenny's likely fully spiky-haired brother. Hey, loser. Adam sprained his ankle and we need one more for even teams. That fate had some big plans in store for her. Jenny. How am I supposed to play? Jenny's bro. You got skates, don't ya? Jenny. Yeah, figure skates. Jenny's bro. Well, figure out how to put M on and let's go. Jenny. Size, fine. Butt rock crescendos as Jenny proceeds to literally skate circles around the boys. Jenny's bro. Whoa, sis. You gotta go to tryouts next week. Voiceover of skeptical coach who initially rejects Jenny before quick cut to same coach cheering for her at the end of the movie, taking away any satisfaction of seeing his character arc. This ain't dance class. This is hockey. Get kid. Yeah. This Christmas cut to Jenny's love interest giving her a pep talk night before the big game. History isn't carved in stone. Cut to kiss as butt rock picks up tempo and volume. It's carved in ice. That figures. Coming December 1997. Cut to black on cymbal crash.
This could be directly lifted from a movie plot that didn't make the cut at Disney in 1996 and we'd never know.
Pay me, Disney. I got your next Pixar film all lined up, gonna be about a bunch of sentient seashells at a sea store. Keanu Reeves is gonna play a surfboard, it's gonna be great.
Did she play for the Ducks?
That's nothing. I had 3 co-workers who did that.
She didn't officially work at my store's location. She was supposed to be at another location training to be a manager there, but her predecessor was still working at said location and the upper management boss didn't want too many people working there at once. So she had to work at my store's location instead. As soon as she started, she had a problem with me. I don't know why, I'll never understand why. I suspect my resting bitch face had something to do with it. She essentially bullied me from the get-go, and when I told my manager about it, she claimed nothing could be done since the rude lady wasn't officially under my manager. So one day the bitch started bumping into me and saying, "You have a problem with me? Let's take it outside," etc. I was half her size, I've never fought in my life outside of sibling squabbles, and I have terrible social anxiety. So I went to the bathroom, called my SO to come pick me up, grabbed my things, and walked out on my shift. I didn't say a word to anyone and left her there alone during lunch rush. I later learned from my friend who also worked there that my manager didn't blame me, and officially, like on the papers, she said I left for personal reasons. She was a nice woman and I don't blame her for not being able to do anything. Upper management at this chain was very irresponsible and didn't seem to care about that store location whatsoever. Checks came in late almost every week, we weren't allowed to have more than 2 people working in the store at a time, didn't always have enough budget to order food, supplies, etc. I'm never working for that man's chain again. I may work for the same store, but I'm not going to work if it's one of the locations that asshole owns.
She made a threat to your personal safety and kept her job?
Sounds like Subway.
I see you, too, have experienced the hell of working for that chain.
The more I hear about that place, the more grateful I am that I found a different job before they called me to come in for an interview when I was a teen.
I used to work part-time at a shipping warehouse, and at one point, we ended up hiring this 16-year-old kid. He made a ton of mistakes that we ended up having to fix for him, but I gave him the benefit of the doubt at first just because he was new. But not only did he never learn from his F-ups, but he was incredibly lazy and lacked any self-awareness. There were instances where he was given a task, but then he'd either DK around in his phone most of the time, hide out in the bathroom for like 45 minutes and then hoped we wouldn't notice, or just whine to my supervisor that he didn't want to do whatever he was assigned. Because of that, he would often take half the day to do like 30 minutes of work and would then complain that he had too much work piled on top of him. It was ridiculous. He lasted maybe a month before my supervisor let him go.
I had 2 co-workers like that at my college job as a theater lighting technician. For a semester the 3 of us were always on shift together, and every time I turned around from doing the actual job, the 2 of them were either DKing around together or on their phones. The worst time was once when I was up a tall ladder changing out lenses. One of them was supposed to be footing the ladder, the other was supposed to be taking the lenses I removed as I passed them down and handing me up the new ones to install. I looked around with a lens, and they were both on the other side of the theater, having wandered away in conversation, not even looking at me. If that ladder had toppled, I doubt they would have even noticed.
Till the answer to the riddle, how many people does it take to change a theater light bulb?
I've had a few jobs where kids like this would come into work. Eventually I'd just telephone them, "You know, you're going to get fired if you don't pick up the slack. There's 100 kids just like you waiting to do this job. Eventually we'll find one who will do it well." Sometimes it worked, sometimes it didn't. But I think a lot of teenagers don't really understand the reality of work. It's not like they have any experience to draw on, and a lot of kids have a sort of immortality complex where they don't think anything bad will happen to them. Sometimes having something like this pointed out by disinterested older coworker is enough to wake them up. If not, then getting fired certainly will do that.
Lol, my easy first job ended up being bathing dogs for 10 hours at a time. Which doesn't sound too bad, except for the hours running an industrial blower inside essentially a big sheet metal bathtub, or my cracked hands, or the possibility of bites, happily I'm quick, or the fact that I had to express the anal gland. My first job after high school was a cakewalk.
I remember thinking the vet techs had an easy job. Working with animals all day. Sounds like getting paid for having fun. Then one of the vet techs came into my cat's appointment with a bite on his hand that looked like it could have come from Cujo himself. I asked him what happened and he said that a German Shepherd didn't take kindly to getting some shot as casually as an only slightly annoyed office worker might complain about Dave from accounting reheating leftover Indian food. Like having a giant dog try and take your thumb off was just one of those mild annoyances that come with any job. Walked out of there with a little more gratitude for my job than what I walked in there with.
At my previous vet's office, one of the techs we liked disappeared. We asked about her, but they said she's taking a break for her health. Later, we found out she was savaged by a Cocker Spaniel with rage syndrome while giving it a bath. Tore up her arm something feast. She had to have multiple surgeries to get partial reconstruction on her arm and wrist, and was unable to work or even drive a car for a long trip because she had to relearn how to use her hand due to nerve damage.
Thank you for watching. We upload new videos every day, so be sure to come back for more fun. Please consider liking and subscribing if you enjoyed the video.